It's
And
nice.
then should I do screen share?
Not yet. We're gonna do interview
Okay.
and then screen share.
Okay.
So, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for coming to speak with us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start out with a few questions about your background. What were you going to say, Marcus?
Oh, I think I was going to say I'm excited.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. I'm excited too. It's always so fun to discover what someone does and how they're going to respond to our tool. So if you can start out by talking about how you're doing illustrations and your work in terms of illustration.
Well, I've actually started doing a lot of illustration start to finish in Procreate and Sketchbook, working on my iPad. I have a day job. I work as a UX designer in San Francisco, so I have a commute, and a lot of the accessibility and being able to use my iPad when I'm on the bus has been really great. I've been doing this for a few years between this job, and I worked at a place called Snapfish before that, and that was really nearby. So I've had the same pattern and commute for a long time. And as a result, I've logged a lot of hours messing around with all sorts of graphics programs on the iPad, iPhone first, and then the iPad, and just really enjoy it. So Procreate seems to have allowed me to create files that are big enough, and doing full page illustrations now, and I'm able to export them. And so it's kind of taken I used to use Photoshop quite a bit, but I don't use the desktop nearly as much as I used to. So
okay,
kind of a convert.
Yeah. Wonderful. So,
and I have a lot of sketchbook stuff that I do just by hand, but then I take photographs and import for collage elements. So I'm sort of using it as a little portable studio.
I see. So can you talk about the combination of tools that you use in your workflow? It sounds like there's Procreate on the iPad. Are there other tools, other programs that you use in your workflow of creating?
Yeah, I do use Autodesk Sketch Pro as well. And then another program that they have called Graphic, I think. It's basically a vector-based drawing program. So if I ever need to do text or some sort of treatment that needs to follow a shape, or if I need a nice sharp vector shape, I'll work on it in there and export it, or copy and paste it into the other file, whatever I'm working in. Seems to work pretty seamlessly. The fact that there aren't text tools in these drawing programs is a little bit annoying. And the fact that there's sort of little by little, the features have been released to support more drag and drop and cut and paste. Some things that were pretty basic seem to have come as time went by, and things got a little easier. But I used to use Illustrator a lot on the desktop, so I had to find a program that could do that sort of precise work as well. So I just keep my eyes open and try things that I think are interesting. I think I met those people at the Maker Faire, and then it seems like maybe they got purchased by Autodesk or something. So there's like little changes happening in products, and just been keeping an eye on it.
Sure. Do you use Photoshop at all in your process of creating?
Yeah, I will. I tend to use it as a last final version creator, where a lot of times if I need to add a little border around or space, like duplicate out some edges or make it fit to particularly for like a full page design where I want to see it, I want to preview it the way that I'm used to get that sort of CMYK conversion and be able to check things out. So I have been using it as a sort of last check for things, and if there needs to be adjustments or if there needs to be some text dropped in and I need to move elements around. It's kind of like the two worlds. Often there's issues around adding copy and things that means that I have to move things, and I just kind of move off the iPad for that last phase.
Okay.
But generally speaking, I start with it on the iPad.
Okay. All right. So we're moving into the next part, which is the interactive part. But I wanted to ask you, you do selection and transform of objects, either on the iPad or on the desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you use the flow for?
What do I use that flow for?
Yeah, for selecting an object and then transform it. What are you actually using that for? Yeah.
Well, because I'm working in layers a lot of time, if I start with a sort of rough sketch, I will tend to move things around until they work within a space. Like I'll do a lot of, for editorial work, I'll generate a lot of sketches and then try to make them fit and work. I do a lot of t-shirt design as well. So sometimes I'll have like an idea that I like from one file, and I'll move it into a sort of template of a shirt to start to play with size and shape on that. And so those, being able to kind of adjust and rotate and resize, and then take an element and resize that up. So that could be as even a sketch form and make it kind of work. And then as I work into layers, if I'm doing some sort of collage, of course, I have a bunch of elements on different layers that I can move around and kind of make a selection and then rotate it or drop it into another layer. Procreate's got some weird, I work with the iPencil, what it's called, the Apple Pencil. And some of their interface isn't available when you're in pencil mode. You have to kind of use your finger like swipe to get to the full menu for cutting and pasting. That took me about a year to discover just by accident. A lot of times that's how I end up finding tools. Procreate's got a lot of that stuff.
Can you show us a workflow on Procreate about you doing selection and transform? Can you show us on your iPad? Can you mirror your iPad, share it, and show us something in Procreate where you're selecting and transforming? And then I'll ask you to switch over to our app and start playing.
Okay. So if I share screen here, this should work, right? Here, let me
mirror your iPad right on your computer using QuickTime.
That's open. Okay.
Then
get that.
You roll your mouse to the left-hand side of Google Hangout, and there's that green button, and it's the screen share button. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Okay. So, and I could do. I'll try this. Start yours. Okay. So that's your app. Let me switch to Procreate. And I will go back to the gallery. Let's see something that would demonstrate it. I don't know. So I have some, this is an element that, are you able to see this okay?
I'm seeing it great. This is working perfectly. Yes.
Okay, excellent. That's good news. Let's see, and I want to see if I have this in layers still, or if it's just one layer. So this kind of shows a collage piece that's in layers, and so you can see that this sort of build up that I was doing. And I started in this file, even though this was going to be a small element in a bigger illustration, I just decided to start working on these as more sort of full size pieces so that I could reduce them down into the collage as opposed to trying to stretch things up. And I get a little like nothing's really set until I start to mess around with it in the other file. So this was like building this character out of all these mushroom pieces in order to use her as an element in a bigger illustration, which I can show you after. But
a chanterelle mushroom, or what kind of mushroom is that?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. That's what
I think that's a chanterelle, and then there's some morale sleeves, and yeah, there's.
I had just started studying mushrooms, so I was like appreciating her.
Oh yeah, yeah. The whole. Let me show you the. Let's see. This illustration probably has all this stuff still in layers. So, 9 by 12.
Oh wow. Okay. So there's
So
other mushrooms, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like sort of all these visual puns and silliness, general food silliness.
Okay, great. So wonderful. I love that piece. That's a great piece. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's a case where I have them in here in layers, and I would take my selection tool and just kind of part of the dilemma with an illustration this size with all of these elements is I can't kind of keep the layers for individual pieces. I end up kind of compounding a bunch of things into different chunks so that I can still move around the file and make changes as it goes on. It gets more and more awful to work on. But
how are you doing her selection? Okay, so there you do her selection and you're doing a move. Okay, got it. And you're doing a little bit.
Yeah. So I select her with a freehand tool, and then then I'm using my fingers because it's kind of a combo of 2-finger, like both my thumbs. So I'm sort of rotating with my thumbs in order to change her positioning and sizing as I drag and rotate. Right. So it's fairly intuitive once you start messing with it, and a lot of that stuff. They've got some pre-canned moves that are in here. Once you've made a selection and you want to flip something, you can use this. It's not highlighting, but there's a button down at the bottom where it says freeform and magnet. Those are for directional flips. Right. And then there's rotation flips that are sort of on increments. Yeah. And then there's this one that used to always shock me, but it basically blows her up to full, whatever size you're working on at the time. It'll blow it up to full screen or full canvas area. So it's a sort of quick method to resize things up and down. Yeah. And then there's forward and backward tools of all the moves you've made in the toolbar at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So they kind of break out their forward and backward tools for this edit, as well as there's a forward and backward sort of Uber arrow once you're out of this move. Like, I don't think I've nailed down anything yet in this move, so it's not really applying the change, but I can still step through the changes that I've tried, it feels fairly flexible. And then this tool down in the bottom left is sort of the Uber forward and backward tool.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about this particular way of selecting in this program? How do you feel about it?
I think it took me quite a while to figure out all the little ins and outs. And there's some tools like so if I wanted to just select this is the type layer for the sort of mastheady thing. If I wanted to do this and say select, now that's the whole selection. Down at the bottom, I still don't, no, that worked. They've improved on this because that used to take like 5 different moves. You had to sort of hold the selection tool and reload the mask, and then you could invert it. So for a while I knew that I'd done it once, but I couldn't figure out how I ever did it. So it was driving me crazy because that's a kind of a common tool move. So there's some things like that, like it's the combination of everything that seems a little disjointed at times. Like this, I love the bar down across the bottom. I think that's really great to kind of consolidate all the tools into one area so that it's easy to understand. But it's the fact that it's in combination with these tools at the top creates kind of a disjoint, which you know, if I was a tutorial guy, I think even if I did a tutorial, it would be so, there's so many tools to learn at the beginning that it's hard to remember those little details unless the tools are in sort of logical relationship to each other, like strategically located, so your brain doesn't break when you're trying to find. It's like, where was it, you know? And there's like the layers are up here, and the layers make a fair amount of sense, but then they have all these sort of hidden tools off to the side, and then so selection is one of those too. So that plays into that tool at the top. That'll be like a sort of Uber selection for the layer. So there's some little pieces of it that feel a little bit far from each other, given that they're so interconnected.
Yep, that's actually really feedback. Thank you. Keep going.
Sorry.
Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. I've used them in many different ways. Like I really explore these tools. Let me see if I can find. There were some like painting studies might have some. So I find it really interesting you can do a drawing on one layer. So that's just, that layer just has these sort of weird shapes up top. And then if you select the layer, you can then apply those shapes to another layer. And then you can do some cool stuff with, you know, like using that layer. I don't know, that's not a color even. And then, or if I wanted to still take that same shape and apply it down here, I could copy these pieces, and then if I go to paste them, and their paste tool, this thing really bugs me. They've got all these other tools that are so connected, and then their paste tool is up here where you would import a file, or it's just the weirdest thing. It's like, why does it have to be so far away and in a drop down? And so you can sort of take elements out of like draw some shapes and then work that into a photograph as a selection, and then copy those pieces. And it just kind of, it's a very playful way of working. And I almost wish there was like a collage mode you could go into where all of those tools were as a little suite, you know, like Adobe does a great job of that, where you create like views that are based for different, like in Photoshop, where you go into video editing mode or something, and you've got like all those tools are sort of instantly available in a workspace. I think that would be really cool to have sort of workspaces depending on the types of things that you're doing. Let's see what else.
That's a lot of really great feedback, actually. Thank you. I'm going to have you go into our application now, and please keep in mind that our application is in a prototype stage, so it's definitely not to the level, you know, to the point where you know Procreate is. But what I'm going to do first is make you start sketching. You know, just start sketching, and then later I'll ask you to pick something, and then, you know, do some transforms with it. So if you can just, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to sketch.
Okay. Yeah. Let me grab my.
Whatever you feel like.
Yeah. So, got this handy drawing tool.
Yep. And I'm going to grab some water while you're doing that. So just freeform draw.
Okay.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I'll have a couple of questions for you in a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Just about the style, the drawing tools themselves. So this is just me using the shape tool that you have as a way to kind of sketch into that.
I see that.
Playing with the pencils. So this tool seems to be a drawing tool that's more, I don't know if it's like a, make it a little bigger so if I can see anything about it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for you, for me to hear you comment on what you feel is, you know, that tool versus the brush that's on top.
Yeah, so the brush on top seems like it's behaves a little differently. I can, maybe from the icon I can see there's a little indicator of a shape, like it drew into that shape, and it's on a different layer here, and the layer seems to have its own type of icon. So the top layer is I guess it's a more of a free form pen, but it wouldn't go into the selection, which was interesting. Like it would, let's see, I'll do it again. If I go to this pencil, it just goes through those borders. So it all, whatever that type of pen sits on this upper layer. The fact that they have the same icon here, which looks a bit like a vector icon, is a little confusing because this feels like a very naturalistic style brush, which I think would have a different sort of sizing.
Can you repeat that? So which one looks like a vector icon?
Well, this, okay, where the arrows, like this sizing icon.
Yeah, oh, that one. Okay, that one.
Okay. Yeah, that I guess the sort of conceptual translation in my head is that looks like a specific type of line that I was going to get. Like I was going to get a vector line where I could control maybe the number of points or like the fidelity of the line or add smoothing to the curves or something. Whereas this, and this tool feels like a very clean style of brush, which does feel like a vector tool, but I'm tapping around and I'm not able to reselect the line. I mean, that would be kind of an interesting combination to have a vector line and a more pixel-based line in the same program, so you could kind of switch between them as a user. As a user, it's, you know, it doesn't make sense that those are so different, but okay, so back to the line. I like all of this. I haven't, let's see if I go in here.
By the way, when you're making, our selection tool doesn't work on the second brush right now. It only works on the first brush. So when you're trying selections and moving stuff, work on the second. So yeah, just focus on.
Okay.
It's okay if you're using the second brush, but just focus on selecting things that you drew using the first brush. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So I can see down at the bottom that there's this handy little menu. I can see at the top menu over here with the brushes that this looks like it's a movable thing, which is cool. I think that's a great thing to be able to customize your workspace. If you're left or right-handed, or if you like those tools, you know, handy. Up here, I would imagine, okay, there's a little arrow button on the top area, which is a back button. I would hazard a guess that there will be a forward button too. So if I was like, oh, I've gone too far, I want to go back to that previous shape that I'd drawn, that would be helpful. Deselect. It's interesting that was still selected. If I go back, it's still selected. That's cool. So it's like you could have two types of drawings going simultaneously and save. I guess does this allow you to, oh yeah, save selection. That's cool.
Yeah, what do you think that does?
I think that that would put it in a handy place, maybe down in the right corner here. This little, there it is. And I could call that up. It's sort of like the pass tool and the channels in Photoshop where you can call them up again when you need them, you know, a month later and everything's changed, which is a nice low, a small way to save important shapes that could be used. I don't know if that's I definitely had to hunt for that. Okay. But these things, you know, you hunt for it once and then I would know that it was down there. I just, again, I love the idea of bringing tools together so that they're in a place where if I need to find that tool, it's kind of more like the whole side here, I guess, is related to, let's see what this does, related to selections and layers. And that's probably pretty logical. I almost feel like this could just be moved up with the top layer button in the top right corner there, so that there's like a little condensed area just like on the left. It feels very like deprioritized, but if I'm going to save something like that, it's probably pretty important to me.
What do you mean deprioritized? Can you talk about that?
Well, just in terms of the hierarchy of the interface, I feel like the things that are up in the top half, like especially the left toolbar, feels like it's kind of it's where my eye will go first. Oh, that's cool. So you can add your little palette to the border as well. That's kind of neat. But I feel like just it might, if there's like this, the world of the right-hand side is all about layers. Maybe it's just the same idea. Like the stuff is all up in the top right-hand corner based on the level of importance. So it sort of cascades down, and then using that. I'm not sure about this whole. Well, it looks like I'm getting into something a little more about moving things around. Deselect. Okay. I can always go back to my handy shape. So if I load that, does it load? Let's see. Load as mask. There we go. It worked.
It may not work fully now, though.
Yeah.
It's nice that you're just.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you do a task for me? Can you draw a few things and then select some content and move it around the screen?
Okay.
You just draw. Yep.
Yeah. Let's draw. Okay. Good old #1 brush. And this is the main brush that you have, right? The style of it.
There's a few brushes under that category. Can you find them?
Let's see.
But there are other brushes that are of that brush type.
Yeah, none of that stuff's clickable yet.
Yeah, so go up to the icon of the first brush. And see if you can find other brush, the first brush. You can see if you can find other brush types.
So what's happened is I've dragged the palette down into the thing below. So it's below the color circle at the bottom of that row. Should I start again? Because it feels like this, I might have broken something.
There's other brush types that are, so each brush type has a palette, and there's other brush types for the one that you're on. So we're actually, there's actually quite like a couple more brush types I want you to explore that has nothing to do with exploring the palette. So yeah, just pull the palette back down and then see if you can discover a couple more brush types.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so click and hold.
So I wanted to get a little feedback on that because that's happened a couple times before. So what was happening there? Why wasn't it as perhaps as discoverable as the palette?
I think because the palette has a clue and you sort of assume that there's one, most icons have sort of one action that's associated with them. So yeah, I could see like that would be tricky to communicate. Like if it's, and this one seems to have, that's funny because I was going to suggest that move tool has a second arrow, but that's, I think that's part of the icon, right? That's like, yeah. So I was going to say maybe there's a way to have, you know, on the brush tool, like a little extra arrow up on the top quadrant. It just feels like there's one thing you can do, and
so then once you got to the palette, you thought that was it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that maybe there's a way to toggle the palette or have that palette include, I don't know. This,
you don't have to design for us. I was just
why
as intuitive.
This is what we do all day. So like I go into, you know, solution mode. But yes. I think this palette does have multiple functions in it, and having a brush, having sets of brushes in here wouldn't be unexpected or a disappointment in any way. It would be a relief in a sense, because this whole thing, if it had one more icon that was brushes, would, you know, just, you can take it it would then have everything you need. Because if you move this around and then you've got to go back here to do this separately, it starts to diffract the whole experience a little bit.
You're suggesting like how to unify actions, right? If you're together, yeah. Okay, so if you can go ahead and use one of the brushes to draw a few things, and then and then move some things around.
Okay, will do. All right, I'm going to do some stuff here, a little bit here. It's a nice brush. Do one of these. I'm going to do another layer, maybe, and that way I can do some moves. All right, so there's this guy, and then I can go to this tool or this tool. This tool looks like it'll move them together. I'll try it, that one, and I can make them bigger.
Okay, what if you just wanted to move just one of the hands? Like just go ahead, select one of the hands and move that.
I would use this tool possibly. Let me see. So this tool combined with the move icon looks like it didn't work.
Yeah, so you've selected, and I'd like you to move that hand. Just see if you can get that to work in some.
Just on one.
Yeah, in some combination of tasks.
Okay. Okay. Just the one.
Just the one.
This is all right.
What do you think of all these options, by the way, as you're being shown them?
That's cool. That's great to have it in the context. So yeah, it's that like click and hold is very robust. There's a whole other world of stuff under there.
Is that a common interaction model you're used to, the click and hold?
I think it's more common than I am familiar with. You know, like I haven't used that many apps that do it this much, but it makes sense in on a tablet because you really don't have the same sort of. I mean, this is like a right click or something on a web browser or a desktop.
Mm.
I'm still trying to figure out how to move this thing though. Okay, so when I get that feedback, I think I'm gold, right? That it's going to move no problem, and it's just the selection which is confusing to me.
So how would you
want it
to move what you selected, the contents of what you selected?
I want it to apply. Maybe this icon.
How would you expect to be able to move it? What's your expectation at this moment?
My expectation is I have selected it and the handles are there, so I'm going to just move it. I'm just going to drag it and it will move. It's behaving as expected, except the drawing's not coming with it, just the selection's moving around. Let's see. So I deselect, let's start again.
Okay, so let's.
I feel like this is sort of what I would expect for that one piece, you know.
Yeah, let's try something else. Go ahead and make another selection and edit. Maybe edit the hand.
Okay. So.
Do one hand.
Okay. Do that again.
Yeah.
I see. I think I see where we're going here. That type of selection works for editing. But so, oh no. So that would work anyway, right? I'd be able to erase it. So it's not necessary for editing. It would just be if I was trying to, like if I select this guy, and then, well okay, so that's how I thought the hand would work. That's just one big element. I don't know what I was doing wrong.
Okay, so that way the arrow works is the way you thought the hand would work. Okay.
Yeah.
Or the selection would work, right? So.
Oh yeah. When I was saying hand, I meant on the hand drawing, like when I was trying to select that one.
So I'm just going to explain the interaction, but then I'd like you to give me feedback on it, right? So go ahead. Let's just go ahead and do the hand on the right side and just select that hand.
Okay. With this tool, with the freestyle.
Yeah, with the last. Just select the hand on the right side. There you go.
Okay.
And then go ahead and move to the triangle tool that you were on earlier, just the one that's above the lasso.
Got it.
Now you can move it, right? Well,
that's weird. Something weird. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Okay.
Was that a vector or a raster thing? I'm just curious.
I think they're both raster. Okay. They're both a sort of watercolory. Okay, so here I am. Let me go.
I want you to use the lasso tool to select the area, and then
and then
I want you to use the triangle tool to move that selection.
Move it. There you go. That makes sense.
Only that.
Okay. On that layer, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to move it, and everything works. Great.
Right. So now let's work backwards. And that was not your assumption of how it works. So can you comment on this interaction model?
Okay. I will go back to the first one and select. So what I was expecting is that right now.
Yep.
Well, this is kind of what worked, right? Okay. Deselect. Let's go back to here. Okay. Now I'm on the right layer. I go like this, and I don't know. I thought this is what I was doing, because this is working the way I thought it would.
Right, but before you didn't have the triangle tool selected. You only had the lasso tool.
Right.
So you moved
so that's
selection, right? And
right.
you had to select the triangle to actually move the content. So basically, we've split it
Yeah.
out. So
right.
There's no right or wrong answers. I'm just looking at how it feels to you and what your options were and all of that.
Okay. Let me see why. Oh, I think. Yeah, I see. Because so this is what I was using this one and thinking that that would move it the way that the triangle tool does. And switching up here is what got me where I wanted to go. I guess I see the need for being able to adjust the position of a selection without dragging the contents. That's what. But I was expecting it to come from this move icon at the bottom here.
Okay. So
that's
right. So what is the use case where you would need to move or transform a selection without its contents? What's you said you see the need for that? What would be the use case for that?
That's a good one. I think it might be pretty rare.
Okay.
But like if I was doing some sort of, if I was drawing a shape, I mean, usually what I do is if I draw a shape, I can lay a fill into it and move it around however I want to. So I don't know if I do see the need. Okay, and this is another source of my confusion, I think, is that, okay, that's just weird. That this little tool down here at the bottom, this set, move, deselect, more, because the icons are the same, I think that was confusing me too. Like that this behaves so differently.
Okay.
I'm going to do because it does seem like a totally different tool.
Right. Okay.
So maybe, okay, here I go. I'm going to do this. And the fact that that pops up now, I feel like because there's two options, and one is to move it and one is to deselect it, I'm expecting, because I'm on that layer, that's going to move that selection I made, because I did that intentionally. I kind of created that shape. Now to move it.
Okay. So what if you were going to edit it? What if you were selecting that hand and to make it smaller? How would you expect to do that?
If I was going to make it smaller, I would think it would be the same thing, right? That's my, like, once I know this pattern now, which this tool up here, I was kind of feeling that was this down here was going to do it. So now, you know, like I think, yeah, I would look to the same tool. The only time that I would, if I was, okay, say I was doing something like this, where I took a shape, created a shape that was, okay, having some issues. Deselect. Okay. Here I am. I've got this cool guy, and I'm going to draw a shape that I want to cut and paste. So I would be using this move tool to take a chunk. Nope, didn't work. Okay, no, it's the same. That's the same issue, right? Okay, sorry.
Yep.
Just not sure that there needs to be a second tool. Do you have a model for what this move is for?
Well, fortunately, the designers do not talk to me about what their assumptions or purposes are. So actually, truly be unbiased. Because if I really was, you know, already like drinking the Kool-Aid of the interaction model, it'd be hard for me to run the study.
Right.
I don't
That
really,
makes sense.
I don't know. Yes. I just care about how it seems to you and what your experience of it is. And that's what's most important anyway, because we don't get to explain to users why we think that. We just have an interface that says that's supposed to communicate everything, right? Yeah.
I think, there might be something here, just this between the fact that moving something means different things in this case. It's moving an existing, so say I loaded, I think what Procreate might have is you load it. I load something in a clear, I load it in a clear layer, and then I can move it around and place it where I want to. That's a little weird too, but honestly, I don't use that much. I'm more likely to select an element and then drag it somewhere, resize it, rotate it, invert it, reflect it, and then
Okay, so maybe try one more interaction now that you know how the model works. So we just see how it looks. So basically, there's moving, there's resizing. What's another one that you do? What's another interaction that you do around this type of task?
Let's see. I guess. I'm looking for clues here on how I would flip it vertically or horizontally. It doesn't allow me to go across the median here. Like that's one method. In some tools, you can just drag this dot that's on the left over to be on the right, and it will flip as a result. Usually there's a tool that is like, so I would think it would be in a drop down for this tool, the move tool, where you could say, like if this had, okay, let me get out of here. That's another thing. In some ways, I feel like if I could just click away from this on the drawing board and have it deselect, that would be fine with me, because I don't know how to get out of this. I've lost my little tool at the bottom that says deselect.
Okay.
Okay, that works. So just switching tools works, but I feel like there could be a drop down for this move tool that could say reflect, rotate, 45 degrees, or you could set the amount of degrees if you wanted to do precise work, or it feels like these both could use a little extra palette, like the brush tools have, where you've got some refinements. Like, in Photoshop, you can invert a selection so it goes from white and black to black and white. That kind of thing you could do with a selection, but in this case, I'm just trying to. I feel like this is a great tool. The rotate is really smart. I like this for photo editors and stuff like that as well. It's very intuitive. The fact that these middle buttons are just going to affect the width is very clear. Height seems like a really good method, especially in these drawing tools. This is sort of similar to what Autodesk has for their graphic program. It allows you to kind of work very flexibly. I don't know where something like copy and paste is, but in my head, I'm filling it in. It's like, of course they would have that, but some of these apps don't, and it's sort of like Procreate has this weird thing. If you don't find their main palette, where you have to duplicate it or copy it basically duplicate and then remove the stuff you don't want from that layer. And it's sort of like this multiple step thing for something that's just, you know, we're so used to doing copying and pasting.
Yep. Okay. I got it. And I'm not sure if there's going to be copy paste. Again, that's one of the beauty is that I just need to listen to expectations and desires of the users. I don't, I don't have any idea of what, you know, how the program's going to end up, you know. Yeah. Okay.
So well, it's very cool. I was going to say it's got lots of cool stuff. So I think it'll be.
I like to get comments on a couple more things. So if you kind of look at these icons for the brushes on the left side, tell me what you think the icons are conveying to you.
I've discerned from this one that it is. I don't even know if it's right. That it's a brush that works as a fill brush for selections, like I think. And then this one's interesting. It's like maybe a filled shape or something. It's not. They're not very clear, honestly. They're maybe it's a new kind of a feeling brush, but it feels like this is sort of an outlined brush that's filled with a solid color just from that icon. Like it's got this outline around a filled shape. So like treating your line like it's a shape in and of itself. But
so
I would then expect to be able to click on the shape and it would have a line and a fill to it, which is sort of an Illustrator thing. And you referred to this as a vector and the other as a raster, right?
The intent is that the top brush with the icon is communicate that these are raster brushes, and the second icon is to communicate that these are vector brushes. But we've been challenged. We've been challenged with what the icon should look like. So I people what they think it is. You know,
Yeah. Well, I would say based on my first reaction to it was that this was going to be the vector brush. And then seeing the texture in these brushes, I felt like this was going to be, you know, a raster brush. And I think the combination, I think this icon, the line size thing is what causes the disconnect, because it's like, well, that's clearly a vector shape. And then if this one had a different icon, that was just a line without the dots, that would be really helpful just to be like, okay, I think I know, you know, I think I'm on the right track. But when I saw that they were the same style, I was like, uh-oh, I don't know what I'm thinking.
Right. Okay, well, thank you. I mean, it's, again, we're not asking you to design it. I'm just asking you what you're expecting. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and stop broadcasting.